of COVID-19 pandemic has created a global health crisis, which is the greatest challenge the world needs to face after World War II. Since its inception in Asian countries at the end of last year, the infection has spread everywhere to each country aside from Antarctica. Until July 16, the worldwide death outperformed 644,500 amid at least 16 million cases. In Malaysia, the first case of COVID-19 was detected on 23rd of January 2020. Within a few weeks, Malaysia has recorded the biggest cumulative number of affirmed COVID-19 diseases in Southeast Asia after the emergence of the biggest local cluster, Tabligh religious gathering held in Sri Petaling. But as we can see now, the government efforts are starting to show a great improvement in defeating this disease. However, the pandemic is significantly more than a worldwide health crisis. It's also an unprecedented socio-economic crisis.
Based on Department of Statistics of Malaysia, GDP fall to Malaysia's GDP fall to 0.7% in the fourth quarter of 2019. This is the lowest growth recorded since the third quarter of 2009, which is negative 1.1%. According to the World Bank, Malaysia's GDP is projected to contract by 0.1% to 4.6% this year amid negative impact brought by COVID-19 outbreak. There are 194 industries involved in the chain of tourism sector in Malaysia. Based on Department of Statistics of Malaysia, tourism sector contribute 15.2% to the national economy and employ 3.5 million people. From this, we could say that tourism sector funding a large part towards the national economy. Thus, the spread of COVID-19 badly impacted the tourism sector due to the government directed movement control order (MCO) all over the country, and tourism sector had to close. Actually, it's not just the tourism sector, but all the business in Malaysia had to close because the MCO. During MCO, citizens were asked to stay at home and they were forbid to across the country. Besides that, all the entrance and national borders are closed during the MCO to prevent foreigners from come into our country. So there is no tourists coming to our country, and this will cause a huge loss in tourism sector. So we can conclude that business closures due to the COVID-19 outbreak during the MCO really lower our country's gross domestic product. Thank you.
So during this COVID-19 outbreak, our Malaysia Consumer Price Index has declined. There are increment and decrement on percentage change of CPI by main groups. As we can see in the graph, for example, there are decline in such main groups like transport, clothing and footwear, but for main groups like food and non-alcoholic beverages continued to increase as compared to the corresponding month of the preceding year. Our CPI in the second quarter of 2020 decreased by 2.6% as compared to the same quarter of the previous year, which is 2019. So on a quarterly basis then, the CPI decreased by 3.0% as compared to the first quarter of 2020. In addition, our inflation rate recorded as low of negative 2.9%. in April 2020. As we know, most people stayed at home throughout the 6 long week of movement control order, namely MCO. It was due to the prices of transport, housing, water, electricity and fuel, according to Department of Statistics. So Malaysia undergo this deflation process when CPI started to decline in March as MCO started. It is recorded as the sharpest contraction in more than 5 decades. So nonetheless, Malaysia is not the rare one which undergo this deflation process, but it is an emerging global trend following the outbreak of COVID-19.
Alright, I will continue the slides talk about unemployment. As we can see, the table shows Malaysia's unemployment rate since 1982 till April 2020. Next, increasing of unemployment rate in April is because of Movement Control Order, or known as MCO, announced by Prime Minister starting from 18 March 2020 till now. Unemployment rate in Malaysia spikes to 5% since 1990. In fact, the Department of Statistics Malaysia said the most affected employed person is who are in manufacturing and service sectors. This is because of they are exposed to the risk of this pandemic and easily get affected if they are continue their work, as they are working to the big circle, and thus some company had to stop their production of the company due to they have no saving to support the workers and lack of saving to pay the salary of the workers. Next, I will continue to GDP per capita, or gross domestic product per capita. Malaysia is the 4th largest economy of Southeast Asia. Before that, I would like to give the definition of GDP per capita. GDP per capita is a metric that breaks down a country's economic output per person and is calculated by dividing the gross domestic product of a country by its population. Okay, the gross domestic product per capita increased year by year till 2019. According to Focus Economic Conscious Forecast Panelist project, this states that GDP per capita of Malaysia will fall to 1.6% in 2020, affected by unemployment, and will increasing up to more than year before in 2021 because of the recovery of employment back to work after the pandemic issue of COVID-19.
I will explain more what happened if population decrease. When population decrease, factor of production also decrease. Factor of production are capital, land, labor, and entrepreneurship. The decreasing factor of production will affect two things, which is physical resources to be decreased and natural resources of goods and services decrease. When natural resources of goods and services decrease, it will lead to the decreasing of production of goods and services, and then it will affect to the demand and supply curve, which is demand to be increasing and the supply to be decreased, and then the price of goods and services will be increased, and then aggregate supply curve shift to the left. While when the physical resources decrease, resources for industrial material also decrease. For example, to get raw material, need a labor to do work. But when the declining of population make production of resources to make raw decrease, and then the production of raw also decrease. When innovations and technology did not progress to the up level, it shows that the economic growth of that country is slow. Why this is happening? Because technology is most important to improve the tools for production of goods and services. And then when the technology did not improve, it will they cannot fulfill the demand for goods and services. So this is show that declining of populations can give colossal soaring and leading impact to the growth of economy in any country.
During COVID-19 outbreak in Malaysia, FBM KLCI declined a lot from 1,446 trades in 11th of March 2020 to 1,276 trades in 19th of March 2020, which is a day after MCO had been implemented. Okay, during COVID-19 outbreak, Malaysian government had implemented MCO, and this will cause Malaysia's stock market to be declined. Malaysia's stock market declined because of soaring unemployment, falling in corporate earnings, and increase in the business closures. Demand on Malaysian goods and services falls, causing export to be declined also, which is in quarter 1 2020, Malaysia export declined by 7.1%. Apart from that, Malaysia private consumption also declined as MCO had been implemented because of during MCO many people tend to stay at home and buy less goods and services than usual. Moreover, during MCO, only essential business and manufacturers can be operated. The non-essential manufacturers such as automotive and electronics could not be run for a while. So, this caused the falls in industrial productions of the sectors. This indicates that the falls in industrial production shows that the supply of goods and services from those manufacturers also decreased.
Due to implementation of movement control order by government, Malaysia's labour productivity per employment declined 0.8% in the first quarter of 2020 from 1.4% in fourth quarter of 2019. The value added per employment was RM22,578 per person in first quarter 2020 compared to RM24,263 per person in fourth quarter 2019. Average hours worked in this quarter was only 44.3 hours per week as compared to fourth quarter of 2019, which is 45 hours. Value added, which indicates the domestic output of goods and services produced, grew marginally at 0.7% in first quarter 2020 as compared to 3.6% in the preceding quarter. The decline in labour productivity per employment during this challenging period was due to most of the industries retaining their employment despite moderated growth in production. The agriculture sector's labour productivity by employment decreased by 8.9%, which in fourth quarter of 2019 it recorded negative 6.1%, while for mining and quarrying sector dropped 0.4%, whereas fourth quarter of 2019 is negative 4%. The manufacturing sector registered a decline of 0.2%, where the fourth quarter of 2019 it recorded 0.8%, and the construction sector showed 5.3%, whereas the fourth quarter of 2019 was 3.2%. The services sector was the only sector which recorded positive growth in labour productivity per employment at 0.5%, where the fourth quarter of 2019 recorded 2.9%.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Nur Hidayah bint Abdul Aziz. Want to talk about one of aftermath effect of pandemic COVID-19. My point is pandemic COVID-19 provided higher spending in deficit. The reality is their expenses quite high and having cost effective. There's a variety of spending such quarantine costs and other interruption as supported by epidemiologists. This effect very relatable to the economic stimulus package that aims to boost economic growth. Moreover, in pandemic COVID-19, there are two ways in stimulating economic package: expansionary monetary policy and expansionary fiscal policy. Malaysia has some stimulus package, including the fiscal stimulus package, health spending, subsidies, and another related spending. All this evidence leading to higher deficit spending. Let's talk about tax revenue. High spending and deficit also influences by tax revenue. Globally, tax collection are failing causes of pandemic COVID-19. The government needs to consume more than collecting tax. The government will find it difficult to cut their deficit by lessening public spending. The rise in the deficit is mainly caused by the fall in tax revenue resulting from the lockdown, induces recession, and the exceptional spending measure adopted by the government to strengthen the economy and control the pandemic. This condition accidentally leading to increases high spending in deficit. So we need to concern about our economic condition for our beloved country, furthermore in facing pandemic COVID-19. Thank you.
Malaysia's economy is supposed to be advanced and expanding truly over the year 2020. But the outbreak of a new virus pandemic COVID-19 has brought misery to the world with a lot of loss and difficulties in daily life. Due to the limitation in our activities, there are a lot of firms in industrial sector need to stop or delay their project and cooperate with the government in order to fight this pandemic. This assignment, our group discovered a few aftermath effects of pandemic COVID-19 to our economy, from gross domestic product falls, consumer price index CPI affected, unemployment getting higher, population decrease, stock market falls, and also high spending deficit. This will affect not only the government but also the community that depend on these economic variables. Despite on this pressure of COVID-19, our Prime Minister assured people that government has a clear plan to resolve the adverse economic impact brought by the pandemic COVID-19. Muhyiddin had mentioned that the plan covered 6 approaches outlined to break the transmission chain of the virus, followed by the measure to revitalize the economy. The government targeting in implementing economic recovery within a new norm, as well as build up a sustainable future for the country. As the conclusion, pandemic COVID-19 did disturb the economic flows in Malaysia, not excluded the other countries around the world. It is affecting a lot of people either on the producer or the consumer side, community or government, the rich or the poor, and so on. The cooperation and commitment from all parties in effort to break the change of this pandemic COVID-19 is the most needed during this period, and hopefully we manage to revive as soon as possible.